Hello everyone, we have to discuss about that UPSC मेंस आंसर राइटिंग जीएस पेपर 1 नवंबर 2023 एक्सप्लेनेशन देख सकते हैं। इसमें हम देखेंगे टेबल्स ऑफ कॉन्टैक्ट, इंडियन कल्चर विल कवर करेंगे एट द साइलेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द आर्ट्स फ्रॉम लिटरेचर एंड आर्किटेक्चर्स फ्रॉम्स एंड अनसाइंड टू द मॉडर्न टाइम्स. Tourism in India is a powerful force for the economic development while the sustainability preserving and showcasing the rich cultures and the natural heritage of the country. Discussed to 50 wordsmen discuss the significance of the Payari painting in the context of the Indian art history, highlighted the key themes, the artistics and styles and the cultural million and that the influences the development of Payari painting to 50 words. Modern Indian history from the about the middle of the 18th century until the present. Significant event, the personality issues. While Jawaharlal Nehru and contribution were the substantial and in lines the strong foundations for the growth and development of modern India, and it is the impact to notes and that his the policies and the decisions have been subjected of the both praise and the criticism. Analysis to 50 words and history of the world and build the included event from the 18th century and such as the industrial revolutions and world wars and the redressal of national boundaries, colonization, decolonizations. In evaluating and the Napoleon's downfalls, and it is either essential to consider both the external military force factors and internal challenges, silence features of the Indian security. Internal challenges, silent feature of the Indian security and diversity of India and for other culturally and diverse country like India in the name of the celebrating traditional and for protections of the cultural value only the leads to the majority and powerful being and the dominated and aggressive towards the weak and critically analysis to 50 words. India regional diversities is other double-edged and as word, the offering both the opportunities and challenges. Analysis to 50 was role of the women and the women organization, population and associated issues, poverty and development issues, economic growth and don't always directly addressed. Issue of poverty and food insecurity. Planning, investment and community and the engagement and are led to the ensuring that the crises and are not only repeatedly urbanizing and but also the developing in other sustainable and including manners and enabled social empowerment, communalism and regionals and secularism. The issues of the farmers and societies is other complex and the multifaceted problems and that step from other combination of social, economically and environment factor examine. The refusals of the Supreme Court of India to grant legal recognition to marriages between and persons between persons of the same sex is viewed by other many as other significant legal setbacks for the queer communities. Queer community in the country and the comment to 50 words. Tracking rural distress. The issues of the farmer societies and is other complex and the multifaceable problems that step and from other combination of the social, economic and environment factor examines the refusals of other Supreme Court of India to grant legal recognitions and to marriages between person of the same sex is viewed and by the many as either significant legal the setbacks and for the queer and community in the country and the comment to 50 words and the tackling rural distress and the through the targeted interventions and such as either in employment generation and the social welfare program can contribute to reducing the includes and of the child marriages examined to 50 words. India should play a more active role in conflict resolutions across the world by the promoting and tolerant inclusively and the non-violence discussed to 50 words. Examine the reason behind the demands for the reservations by the dominants and communities in India and the implications of such an reservation in the context of challenging societal and the economic dynamics. Important geography, geophysicals and phenomena and such as the earthquakes, tsunamis and volcanic activities. Water stress is other significant challenges faced by the many countries and including India and the addressing and it is the required a the comprehensive approach analysis to 50 word and volcanic activities play a crucial role in the shaping and the earth surface and the contributing to geological process and however it is the impact on the environment and human activities can be both and beneficial and detrimental analysis what defines and the earthquakes and swamps and include sites and the recent occurrence of and the earthquakes and swarm in Iceland and located and on the mid and Atlantic ridge and 10 meters silent features of the world and physicals and geography. El Nino warmings of the Pacific waters and disrupt and global weather patterns, leading to the range of the climate impact and various extreme weather events and worldwide explained to 50 words. Indian culture bill covers the silent aspects of the arts forms and literature and the architectures from the ancient to the modern times. And tourism in India and is a powerful force for the economic development while and simultaneously preserving and the showcasing the rich cultural and natural heritage of the country and discuss to 50 words difficulties level moderate and reference the Hindu. Why the questions? The Union Tourism Ministry of the Bed Nasty said that it has formulated a modern lay on the adventurous tourism which covers the obligations and institutional frameworks and penalties registration and the provision of the insurances and cover the needed for the sections key demands of the questions to write about the potentials of the tourism sector in India and the steps that India needs to the take to the boost tourism in the country. Directive will discuss this is an all the encompassing directive and you must debates on the paper by going through the detail of the issues concerned by the examine each one of them and you must give reason for both for and against arguments. Structure of the any answers and introductions begin by the giving statistics and related to the tourism in India body. First, write about the status of the tourism in India, give fact and the figures and related to the revenue and forex earnings, tourism footfall and also highlighted the diverse nature of the tourism circuit in the country and highlighted the areas and where the work is needed, the security, infrastructure, connectivity, and so on. Give detail of thus the three aspects. Next, the mentions the step taken by the government in improving the aforementioned and areas through the schemes and programs like the Prashad e-tourist visas, etc. Discuss the step and that needs to be taken still to fill in the gaps. Conclusions and conclusion by the writing are the way forward. Introduction. Every region in India is identified and with its the handicraft and fairs, folk dances, music and its the peoples, and hence India is other country and with other great potentials for tourism. The tourism industries employ either large numbers of the pupils and both the skills and unskills. It is promotes the national integrations and international brotherhood. There is no others the country in the world and which offers such a the wide choice of the destination like India. The Union Tourism Ministry on the Wednesday said that it has formulated a modern law on the adventurous tourism which cover the obligations and institutionals and frame penalties and registration and the provision of insurance covers needed for the sector's body. Tourism status in India. In the pre-pandemic time and tourism sector and the contributed US 250 billion in 2018 to the India GDP. It is the crumbled and down to the US 122 billion in the 2022. To pandemic, the shares of the tourism to the GDP has the hovered and around the 5-6%, and with the post-pandemic recovery, the tourism industries is expected to reach and US the 512 billion by the 2028 in the 2020, and the Indian tourism sector accounted and for the 39 billion jobs, and which was 8% of the total unemployment in the country. And by 2020 and 29 it is the expected to the account for the about 53 billion jobs, and India ranks 34 in the travels and the tourism competitiveness and reports 2019 published by the World Economic Forum. Data show that the domestic tourism has the recovered to the pandemic's levels and even the exceeding it is in the some cases. This is the evidence in other record 1.84 crores domestic tourism visiting the Jammu and Kashmir in 2022. Positive effect of the tourism in India. In employment generation, tourism sectors provided diverse opportunity for jobs like in the hospitality, hotels, accommodations and transportation, stores, guide and travels operation, etc. Revenue generation. Tourism contributed 6.23% to the national GDP and 9.3% of the total unemployment in India. More than 20 billion people are now the working in the Indian tourism industry. Source of the foreign exchanges earnings. Tourism sector was the third largest foreign exchange earners and for the country in 2019. Tourism is an the important source of the foreign exchange earning in India. अरे यार बताऊं. More than 20 billion people are now the working in the Indian tourism industries and source of the foreign exchange earnings. And tourism sector was the third largest foreign exchange earner for the country in 2019. Tourism is an the important source of the foreign exchange earnings in India. This has favorable impact on the balances of the payment of the country. By 2028. Indian tourism and the hospitality is expected to the earn US as 50.9 billion as the visitors and exports the compared with the US and 28.9 billion in the 2018. Preservations of the national heritage and environment. Tourism helps preserve several places and which are of the historical importance by the declaring them as the heritage site. And for the instant, the Taj Mahal, the Qutub Minar and Ajanta and Ellora temple, etc. would have been declared and the destroyed if the effort and had not been and taken by the tourism department or to preserve them. And likewise the tourism also help in the conserving the natural habitats of many endangered species and developing the infrastructure. Tourism tends to the encourage the development of multi-use infrastructure that the benefits and the host community, including various means of the transport and healthcare facilities, and support the center in the additional to the hotels and high-end restaurant and that the caters to foreign visitors and the development of the infrastructures and has in the terms and includes the development of the other direct productivity actions. Repeat, huh? Promoting peace and the sustainability. The tourist industries can also help the promote peace and the stability in developing countries like India by the providing jobs, generating incomes and diversified the economy, in protecting the environment and promoting the cross cultures and awareness. However, key challenges like the adoptions of the regulatory and frameworks mechanism to reduce the crime and corruptions etc. must be the addressed, and if peace enhancing benefits and from this the industries and are to be the release. Measures needed to the boost tourism sector and infrastructure. The government has been increasing the investment and strengthening of the country and road and rail network and promoting the port and development is other significant drivers and for the growth of the tourism sector. The other station scheme is helping the modernize railways and station and while the regionals and the connectivity schemes and उड़े देश का आम नागरिक is the Swadesh Darshans and the Prasad schemes and aim to the stimulate and growth in the niche tourism segment such as the religion, heritage and wellness, medicals, adventures and mice, the wildlife etc. Under the Swadesh Darshan schemes, the government has launched the several schemes based the circuit and like the Buddhism circuit and which cover destination associated with the life of the Lord Buddha. Promotions, the compositions, promotionals and activities such as the Incredible India and 2.0 and comparison focus on the niche tourism product including the yogas and wellness, the luxuries and cuisines, wildlife among others. The find the Incredibles you and comparison focuses on the promotion of the niche tourism production of the country and on the digital and the social media information helplines. The government has introduced the concept of the e-tourism and e-medicals visas and which has helped increase the inbound tourism to the country and additional initiatives such as the Atithi Devo Bhava and either 24/7 multilingual tourism helpline among the others have helped improve the safety and the security of the tourism and on the pilot basis, and the Incredible India helpline has been set up to the guide the tourism safety. The Ministry of the Tourism has adopted a code of conduct for the safe tourism which contain other set of the guidelines to the encourages and tourism activities to be the undertakens and with the respect to the basic rights and like the dignities and the safety of the boat tourism and local the resistance in particularly women and children's investment. The government allow and 100% regionals and directions investment in the travel and the tourism sector and through the automatic goat to increase investment and across the sector. And more recently the GST and rate the cut on the hotel rooms and tariff across the board and has been other positive move for the industry and is expected to the boost the sector and competitiveness and globally. Cleanliness and the hygienes and measure the cleanliness and composition has been the launch under the Swadesh Bharat movement for the protecting and the preserving the sanctity of monuments of natural heritage of the national heritage. The Ministry of the Tourism has also launched awareness compositions to the encourage cleanliness of surrounding and help create other Swachh Bharat and Swachh Amarak assistant to stand the financially assessment to state including places of the religions and important for various tourism project in consultations and with them the subjected to availability of the fund and entrance the priorities and the liquidations of pendings and utilization certificates and the adherence to the scheme's guidelines digital database. In September 2021, the government launched the Nidhi and 2.0 national integrated database of the hospitality industries schemes and which will the maintain the hospitality database comprising the accommodations units and travels agent tour operators and others. The Nidhi and 2.0 will the facilitated and the digitalizations of the tourism sector by the encouraging hotel to the registered and themselves on the platform. Skilling. The Ministry of the Tourism has introduced the Incredibles India's Tourism Facilitators IITF and the Incredibles India's Tourism Guide IITF and certification programs and to create an online learning platforms of well-trained tourism facilitators and guide across the country and way forward. The government should continue to promote India diversities and rich heritage to the establish it is the positions as other tourism paradise. The promotional and composition should targeted both domestic and the foreign tourism and similarly the extended of them waste the tourism circuits can be expanded and the tourism sector has other potential to the providing lot of the livelihood opportunities in smaller cities towns and the upskillings and the reskillings and can help address the issue of the jobless growth. The government should also the promotes green and the sustainable tourism to tackle issue relating to the water crisis, pollutions and waste management, etc. There is need to the balance the promotion of tourism with safeguarding the physicals, socials and culturals environment in the destination area. The government and should the further reforms the tourism visa norms and the process to facilitate tourism. The government should also the explore the possibilities of the expanding the visas on the arrival facilities. The focus should also on the supporting and the promoting the emerging segmented of the tourism conclusion. If the goal of the positioning of the India and as one of the world and best the tourism destination by the 2047 and there is need to the integrated various schemes of the different ministry and need to the involve various holders and local communities necessary inventions and aid the urban and the rural level should be the priority. Discuss the significance of the Pyari paintings in the context of the Indian art history and highlighted the key themes and artistic style and the cultural milieux that influence the development of the Pyari paintings and difficulties level through the reference Indian Express shine on it. By the question and Dr. the Brijinder and Nath and Goswami passed away in the early mornings of the November 17, leaving a great void in the world of the Indian art history, and he was other scholars on the school of the Pyari arts. Key demand of the questions to write the features of the Pyari paintings and their the significant directive words. Discuss. This is an all the encompassing directive. You must debate on the paper by going through the details of the issues concerned by the examine each one of them and you must give reason for both for and the against arguments. The structure of the answer and introduction and begin by giving and context of the Pyari paintings and in the borders genre of the miniatures and paintings and body the first and write about the various features of the Pyari painting and regionals and the aesthetics and influences by the natural beauty culture diversities of the Himalayas region and diverse the themes and intricates and style and the interplay of the culture influences. Next write about there the significant conclusion by the summarizing the above. Introduction. Pyari school of the paintings and refers to the Indian and miniatures paintings and from the mountainous regions of North India and it is originated and during the 17th and 19th century in places like the Vashoholi and Mainkot and Nurpur and Champa and Kangra, Kangra and the Guler and Mehndi and the Gorhawal. This school of the painting is the primarily and characterized by other coarsely and the flamboyant style which blossomed into the most exquisite and the sophisticated style of the Indian painting at the name. Suk was the renowned artist in the mid 18th century and his the family's workshops continued for two more generations and body features the central themes of the Pyari painting is the internal love of the Hindu and deities, and Radha and Krishna are thus the miniatures and are the characterized by their the lyrical qualities and rhythmics and the spontaneity and softness, intricate detail and the intense and the portrayal of the human emotions and features. They have other distinct style and compared to miniature school like the Deccan and the Mughal and the Rajasthani Rajput. Significance of the Pyari school of painting. The topics used for the Pyari paintings and spanned from the mythology and to the literature and now the techniques and where the instituted the portrayals of the internal of the everlastings and love of the Hindus and deities Radha and Krishna is the fundamental themes of Pyari painting. In other standard Pyari paintings and numerous and features appears on the canvas seats and all the animated figures. The compositions and the colors and complexities of each and every figures are unique, defining the Pyaris and miniatures and paintings and simply by the reason in which they were the sketch might need to be the more accurate and as the political frontiers in the era and they were the created were the flexibles and the often changes between the several rulers. Style of the Pyari painting and the Basuhuli schools. This school of the Pyari painting and received the patronage from the Raja Kripals and Pal and famous the paintings belonging to this schools and the artist named the Devi Dasa and executed miniatures and in the forms of the Rasa Manjuri and insolutions in the 1694 AD and the insolution from other series of the Gita Govind painted by the artist and Manaku in 1713 AD in another famous example of this school of painting and what can be the gathered from the above painting. There is a change in the facial types and which because becomes a little behaviors and also in the theory forms and which the assumes either somewhat and naturalistics and the characterized which may be the due and to the influences and of the Mughal painting. There is other use of the strong and the contrasting colors, monochrome background and large eyes and bold the drawing and use of the beadless and beings for the showing diamonds on the ornaments, narrow sky and the red borders and are the observers in this the miniatures figures. Devi rides and on other chariots and Basuhuli and the Pyari school of the painting and Kangra schools. The name Kangra style is given to this the group of the painting and for the reasons and that they are identical in the styles and to be the portrait of the Raja Sansar Chand of the Kangra paintings of the Kangra styles and are the attributed and mainly to the Nenshuk families and some of the Pyari painters and found the patronage in the Punjab under the Maharaja and Ranjit Singh and the Sikh nobilities. In the beginning of the 19th century and executed the portrait and the other miniatures in other modified version of the Kangra styles in which the continued till the middle of the 19th century silent feature of the art school of the arts. The delicate of the drawings and the qualities of the national smears and the standard out features of this the school of art. The Kangra styles is by the far the most the pathetic and the lyricals of the Indian styles marks and with the serene beauty and delicacy of the executions and distinctions in the is the delineation of the female face and with other straight nose in line with the forehead and which came in the vogue use and around the 1719 and is the most distinctive features of this the style and most popular and themes, and that were the painted were the Bhagavata Puranas and Gita Govind and Nala and Damayanti, Biharis and Satsai and Rama, Ragha Mala and the Baramasa. Kangra School of Painting and the Champa School. The typical female figures in paintings of the Champa School exude and warmth and the sensual and charming beauty, and not for its the depth and handlings and mixing of the colors, and the canvas space of the Champa painting is the dominated by the red and the blue colors. And Mandi schools art from this school is noted and for its the depictions of the tantra and cult associated with the worships of the Devi or the goddess, the pharaoh shears and the breathful form of the Devi are giving other larger than and life and finished and crude and mystified and look with deep tones of the red, black and the blue shades. And conclusion, it is considered and that the Payari paintings and emerged from the Mughal style of the painting and the florized due to the sports of the Rajput rulers. And recently Dr. Brijinder Nath Goswami, the scholars on the school of the Payari arts and passed away, leaving a great void in the world of the Indian art history. Modern Indian history from about the middle of the 18th century and until the present significant event personality issues, and while the Jawaharlal Nehru and contributed bear the sustenance in the laying a strong foundation for the growth and development of modern India. It is the important to the note that his policies and the decisions and have been the subject of the both praise and the criticism. Analysis to 50 words. Difficulties level moderate reference Indian Express and why the questions and articles explorers Jawaharlal Nehru lesser known role as other historians and his the patience for writings about the past. He demands of the questions to understand Nehru contributions in buildings and New India and his the criticism and the directive words. Analysis. When asked to the analysis, you must examine the methodologically the structure of the natures of the topics by the separating it into component part and the present them in other summaries. Structure of the answer. Introduction, beginning by the emphasis and the crucial role of the Nehru in freedom struggle and to go on to become the first prime minister of independence India. Body. Write about the various factors of the contribution of Nehru as such as the Nehruvians and socialism, non-alignment policy, industrialization, contributions toward the constitutional frameworks and etc., and how it is the still and relevant in the present day social dynamics. Next, write about the criticism of the Nehru and his policies, conclusion, and the summarize the above said and point and how the Nehru is trust and with the India destiny and has the remained relevant till date. Introduction. Jawaharlal Nehru in 1889 and 1964 and was the first Prime Minister of India, the controlled figure in India politics before and after the independence. He emerged as the paramount leaders of the Indian independence movement under the tutelage of the Mahatma Gandhi and the led India from its the established as and the independence nation in 1947 until his the death in the 1964. And body Nehruvian policies and that the aided nation building and post-independent Nehru visions of India and was the anchored in either set of the ideas and such as the democracy and secularism, inclusion and economic growth and free press and the non-alignment in the international affairs and also in the institutions and that the would lay the foundation for the India future growth and thus the institutions and touch every kind of the economic activities and ranging from the agriculture to the aviations and space research consolidations of the nations. Nehru took the firm stance against the possible decisions of India into the smaller principalities, and he established the state recognizations and communities to fulfill regional aspirations of the peoples and which would lower the changes of them and wanting to set from the nation, and this way he is the strengthened the unity rehabilitations of the refugees from the Pakistan and were giving the shelters, and the attempt were the made to the reduce communalism and secularism. It was the mainly due to the Jawaharlal Nehru and effort that the India emerged as other secular state in the mid 12th century, and much before the independence he played the heroes role in the development of other secular basis for the Indian polity, and this help in the building the narratives of the unity and diversity's welfare state. Nehru was other practical idealistics and the beliefs that the socialism and the democracy were not contradictory and but the complementary to each other, and he wanted to build other welfare state for the equitables and distributions of wealth. Planning Commission Nehru, the pragmatics and the socialist, understood and the importance of the welfare state in other country and which the does not have the sufficient infrastructure established other planning commission for long term plannings of the social schemes, non-alignment policy, NAM, and Nehru being the foreign minister did not want to join the ideas of the powers and blocks, and also he did not want India to remain the aloof from the world politics, and therefore the Nehru and the visionary at the approach to the established name with the others and the third world countries and proved to be the ideal foreign policy approach. The period of Nehru is recorded and in the history and as the Nehruvians and eras, and during which the democracy took the road, and the social, economic, cultures, and the educational development for the nations and building despite the facing daunting task, and he was successful in maintaining and strengthening the nations. History of the world and will include events from the 18th century such as the Industrial Revolution, World Wars, and retrievals of the national boundaries and colonization, decolonization. It is the evoluting Napoleons and draft downwards fell. It is essential to consider both extremely military factors and international challenges. Difficulties level moderate and reference Indian Express. Why the questions? Napoleon showed to the conquer Egypt to the undermines British power, and he failed. But the scholars, and he the brought and with him, and have the left on and the enduring legacy and key demands of the questions, and to write about the factors and that led to the downfall of the Napoleons and directive words. Evaluates when you are the asked to evaluate, and you have to the pass of the second and judgment about the truth of the statement in questions. There is the scopes of farming and the opinion here. Structures of the answer. Introduction. Beginning by the giving is the giving context. Body. In the first part write about the reason for the welfares of Napoleon as the empire of the France, and over extensions of the Napoleon empire, formation of the six coalitions, कॉन्टिनेंटल सिस्टम लिखना है, उसमें मिस्टेक बाय द नेपोलियंस एंड द इन्वेडर्स ऑफ द रशिया बाय नेपोलियंस के. नेक्स्ट गिविंग कॉन्टेक्ट लिखना है अबाउट द इन्वेशंस ऑफ रशिया बाय नेपोलियन एंड इट्स द आउटकम्स. मेंशन हाउ इट्स बिगेंस द डाउनफॉल ऑफ द नेपोलियन एंड टू व्हाट एक्सटेंड it was responsible for his the deadline. Conclusion. Conclude by giving other balanced and opinion. Introductions. Despite the Napoleon Bonaparte and early the successes in the restoring orders to France and aid the beginnings and of the 1800s, and the 10 years after he becomes emperor would be the mired by the failures and eventually leading to his downfall. Body. International changes. 8 Tilsit and 1807, and Napoleon's was at the height of his the powers, and but from the 1808 and to the 1814, and his the power was the continuously on the deadline, and he fell was other repeat as his rise. Continental blockades, and one of this the first moves in the attempting and to the conquer or gain and the advantage over much of the Europes, and came with the continental system, and this the degrees and enacted by the Napoleon was meant to the weaken and less In it, he covered and any the countries and who were the either neutral meanings and they didn't take the side or the who were the allies and with the France to stop the doings the business and with the England. It was his hope and that the England and would suffers economically the continental system. However, failed and due in the part and to the fact and that the England and had the natural resources to the sustain itself the country and that was the weekend and the or ironically and was the France and the Peninsular War and from the 1808 and to the 1814 France was the engaged in the Peninsular War against the Spain and the Portugals and who were the aided in the conflicted by the Great Britons and Napoleons had set his the side on the conquering the Iberian and Peninsula and the actually succeeded in doing so when he the conquered and Spain in the 1808 and he installed his orders and brothers the Joseph as the king of the Spain and his the short rules and lasted from the 1808 and 1813 and this the upset the Spanish needs and who had the once been the alliance and with the France and the Peninsulars were the turned out to be quiet and costly and although the France and who against the Spain and this was the turning point in the Napoleon regions. It was the movement in which his the previous an alliance and released and how landed greedy he was becoming. Russia invaders on June 24 and 1812 and the Grand and armies led by the France emperors and Napoleons and Bonaparte crossed the Nieman and river invading the Russia and from the present day Poland. The result and was a disaster for the France. External military and factors in 1812 the France under the Napoleon embarked and on and the invaders of Russia. He had the hoped to gain political and advantage and with the both Russia and Poland and as a result of this the invaders and to the defeat Russia troops and it was the however a total disaster. Not only what is the freezing cold and but the Russias and were the certainly not open and to any and the engagement and with the France. They retreated but not before the enacted and a the scorched and earth policies and one in which they the burned all of the crops and as they the moved and further away from the France. This left and Napoleon troops and with little to the east, with little to the east, and all the total aid, and the France armies and would lose hundred of the thousands of men and during the 6 months and invaders. By June of the 1815, a Napoleon list of the enemies and countries and had the grown and to include the Britain, Australia and Prussia and Russia and due to his the actions. The four countries all the breaked themselves and for what they the assumed and would be the war and with the Napoleon forces and when he got wind of this he thought and he might and catch them by the surprise and try to the defeat them. He subsequently and invaded and Belgiums and the spark and which the ignited and the battles of the Waterloo and Napoleons and his the forces and where the defeated aid this the battles and which would mark the final defeat and of his the resign. Conclusion: the invasions and lasted 6 months, and the grand and the armies and lost more than 3 lakh men, and Russia lost more than the 2 lakhs in the singles battles and the battles of the Borodinos and resulted in more than 700 casualties and in one day in the invasion of the Russia and efficiency halted Napoleon march and across the Europe and the resulted in his the first exile and to the Mediterranean island of Elba. Silent feature of the Indian society and diversity of India. For other crucially for the culturally and diverse and countries like the India in the name of the celebrating and traditions and protections of the culture's values only the lead to the majority and powerful being the dominant and the aggressive towards the weak. Critically analysis 251 difficult level through and the reference the Hindu and by the questions. Caste and the gender are the deepest social and the cleavages in the our society. The intersections of thus the two socials and identities and plays other heroes with the lives of the adolescent and young adults in the Indian schools and colleges. Key demand of the questions and to write about how the difference and the diversities and the inclusively and coexist and in and how traditional is the imposed indirect one and critically analysis when asked to the analyze and you must examine the methodologically and the structures or nature of the topic and by the separating it into the component parts and the present them in the when critically is the suffix and the prefix and two other directive and one needs to the look and aid the good and the bad of the topic and give other balanced and judgment on the topics. Structure of the answer introduction begin by the giving and the contact and recording regarding the various attributes and of the diversities bodies. First mentions the various cultural and narratives and which brings out and sharps the distinctions and in the prejudices and throw light on the homogeneous tendencies and which the ignore diversity substantials and with the examples. And next write about the high despite the above and shortcomings and how the inclusions and diversities exist as the cornerstones of Indian society substantials and with the examples conclusions. Conclude by writing other way and forward to the achieve inclusively by the overcoming political reference and introductions. Introduction it's the core and the diversities and significations the acknowledgement and celebrations of the unique and attributed and that the each individuals brings to the bed tables. It extended other welcomings and embrace to the myriad and how and ways of the thought and belief heritage and expressions that the together enrich and the message of our the global community with this best and the landmass and diverse climates and ancient history and India boost and the astonishing and array of the language and religions, tradition and the cuisines and arts forms and the lifestyles. It is diversity is evident in the coexistence of the numerous and ethnics and groups, language and the religion practices and within its the border. This diversity is the deeply and rooted and in India history and where the multiple civilization have the flourished and the intermingled over the millennia and from the Indus Valley civilization to the Mughal Empire and the beyond India has been other melting a pot of India belief and the customs and which have the influences. It is the architectures and literature, music and way of life. Body diversity is leading to the divisiveness and the religious differences and the communal tensions. India is known for its the religion diversities with the Hindus, Muslims and the Christians, Sikhs, the Buddhism and others the religions and groups coexisting and however this the diversity has at the times and led to the religions and tension, conflict and even the communals violent disagreement and over the religious practices and belief the places of the worship that have the resulted in the incidents and that have the strength and social cohesion and examples the Ayodhya disputes and involvings The Babri Masjid, and the Ram Janmabhoomi has been the long-standing religious conflict and between the Hindu and the Muslims, resulting in communal tensions and violence over the years. And Delhi Road and KG and Hali roads in the Karnataka, etc. Caste-based discriminations. The caste system deeply ingrained in the India social fabric has led to caste-based discriminations and the inequalities. While measures have been taken to the address and thus the issues and caste-based conflict and the intolerance continues to the exist, and particularly in rural areas, e.g. even to today. Instances in the rural India and have been the reported and where the discriminations is seen the against the Dalit using the public spaces. And linguistics and the diversity and regionalism, and India's linguistic diversity is based on with the hundred of the language and spoken and across the country, and however the linguistic diversities has the sometimes and fueled regionalism and the separated movement and different in language have the occasionally and lead to the tensions and over the language policies, state boundary and culture identity. Example, the movement for the separates and state of the Telangana emerged due to the regional and disparities and the different in language and culture, and leading to protest and demands for the creations of a new state identity politics and reservations. Identity based politics and such as the caste based reservations through the intended to uplift the marginalized and the communities have the sometimes exacerbated and the decisions competitions for the limited and the resources and the opportunities, and have led to the conflict between the different social groups, and Marathas reservations Jat reservation issue are the case in point, and political and the ideological difference. India politicals and landscapes is the characterized by other range of the ideological and parties and representations various interested, and thus the different can the escapes and into the intolerant and the divisiveness, and particularly and during the election compositions when rhetorics might and targeted specifics the communities or groups. Ethnic and tribal conflicts and tribals and the ethnic diversities, and has the sometimes and resulted in the conflict over land and the resources and rights, and tribes and the indigenous communities, and have at the time been marginalized and leading to the tensions and between them and the larger society. The Manipur violence and the roots and between the Metis and cookies is other black and marks in the independence Indian history. Regional differences and the autonomy in India based the geographical expanse and encompasses and various regions, and each with its the own distinct cultural and identity, and regionals and difference can the sometimes and give the rise and to the demand for greater autonomy or even a separatist and the movement leading to the tension with the central government. Example, the demand for other separated and Gorkha land and state by the Gorkhas. Gorkhas in West Bengal has the resulted in the conflict and with the state government reflected reason and identity and clash and the call for the autonomy. Social media and the machine formations, and while the social media has the connected pupils from diverse and background, it has also been used to the separated and the machine formations and had speech and the divisive and the narrative flash and the narratives and related to the religious and ethnic or the cultural issues, and can easily separated online exacerbating and intention. Historical conflict and the narratives different, and the communities might have the bearings. interpretations of the historical event and which can lead to the tensions and disputes historical grievances and narratives and can contribute and to the intolerant and divisive attitudes. Economic disparities, socio-economic disparities and between the different group and can lead to the resentment and the intolerances, and when the economic opportunities are the unequally and the distributed, it can the contribute to other sense of the inequalities and the divisiveness. Diversity in India, the despite challenges festival India the diverse and the festivals and are a testament to its the inclusively, and Diwali and celebrated by the Hindus and is also the enjoyed and by the Sikhs and the Jains, and Eid observed by the Muslims, and seems the participations from the people of various faiths and who join in the spirit of celebrations and holy the festival of the colors and is embraced across the communities. Initiative like the Ek Bharat and Shresth Bharat and unity in crisis. During time of the crisis and communities comes and together and irrespective of their the differences and instances like the naturals and disaster or the communal tensions and often the lead to the Niagara and the strength in helping one another without the regard for regional, for religions or culture background. Cultural exchanges, various art form and the cultural practices are the appreciated and the shared across the communities, and classic dance forms the like the Bharatnatyam and the Karna Kathaks and are the admired beyond their the originating reasons, and music the generates and culinary and traditionals and the traditional tried and find the enthusiast and across the country. Interfaith marriage, in recent time, and interfaith and marriages are the becoming more the common exemplify and individuals and willingness to embrace love and the unity despite the religious differences, and such the unions and often lead to the cultural exchanges that the enrich families and communities. Historical site, India historical site and the monuments often the reflected the synthesis of diverse architecture style and the cultural influences, and the Qutub Minar in Delhi and for the instant exhibitions. Both Islamic and Hindu architecture element language breadth. And while India has other multitudes of the language, English and the Hindi served as the bridges between the different linguistic groups and the enabling communication and interactions across the regions. And cultural heritage, UNESCO recognition of Indian cultural sites and like the Taj Mahal, Jaipur and the city space and the Ahmedabad historical city center underscored and the value placed and on the preserving and the celebrating and diverse heritage. Education and the workplace, educations and institution and workplaces and often the bring together pupils from the different background, fostering understandings and the cooperations. Student and professional engage and with the peers and from the various regions and cultural and language leading to other borders and worldview. Cuisines, India and the culinaries and landscapes is other testament and to its the diverse and cultures and people from all communities and religions and disease and from the across the country and appreciating the varieties of the flavors and the in gradient that the different region offer. Constitutional values and India constitutional in series and the principle of the equalities and non-discriminations and the freedoms of the religions, legal the protections and access to the ensure that the individuals and can the practices their the belief and cultures and without fear of the prejudice. Civil society initiatives and various non-governmental organizations and the communities-driven initiatives works to the promotes understandings, tolerance and the collaborations and among the diverse groups, and thus the effort and are the visual in the community project and dialogues and the cultural events. Conclusion, it is the important to the note that the wild diversities can the sometimes contributed to the intolerant and the Civilness. Thus, issues and are not the inevitables and outcomes, and they often arise and due to the historical, social, economically, and political factors, and effort to the promote out understanding, tolerance, and the dialogues among diverse communities are the crucial for the fostering and the unity and ensuring that the diversities remain other source of the strength rather than division. India regional diversities is other double and engage and the experts offering both the opportunities and the challenges analysis to 51 difficulties level from the reference the Hindus and the side on India. Oh. India recognition diversity is other doubled and engages as but offering both the opportunities and challenges analysis. 250 words and difficult level through the reference the Hindi and by the questions the articles calls for other more and the inclusive and the inequitables and approach in the recognizing either respect the recognition and the diversities and within India key demand of the questions to write about the diversities in India and challenges associated with it and way to overcome and them and the directive words and analysis then ask to the analysis you must examine and the methodologicals the structures natural or the natures of the topic and by the separating in it into the components and part and the presented them in a summary structure of the answer introduction start by other mentioning how India is other culturally and diverse since the time immemorial body in the first and in the detail and write about the various aspects of the biodiversity India diverse regions bring the wealth of the cultural traditional language and the arts forms and making the countries and either vibrant topos of the customs and practices. Next, write about the various type of the challenges association with the diversities in India and the cites example to the substantials. Next, write about the ways to the counters. Conclusion and the conclude and by the writing a way forward the introduction India is the nation of staging and breadth and the complexity and stand as other testament to the profounded and the tapestry of the human civilization it waste and the expenses encompasses and the myriad of the language and religions cultures and the landscapes and weavings the together other mosaic of diversity that is the unparalleled and from the snow capped and peak of the Himalayas and to the sun heaved shores of its the coastal region India geographicals and the cultural landscapes is as the diverse and as it's the captivating and this the reasons diversity is not the merely a characteristic of India and it is very the essence and that the define the nations and offerings both the opportunities and the challenges that have the shaped and it's the history and the continues to the influences it is the path forward body challenges posed by the India regionals and diversities linguistic diversities India is a home and to the over 19,500 languages and the dialect while Hindi and English are the official languages, each state has its the own official languages, and as the and linguistic diversities can the sometimes and lead to the communication barriers and the challenges in the implementing uniforms policies and religious and the pluralism and India is other country and with other multitude of regionals and including the Hinduism, Islam and Christianity and the Sikhs. Sikkim and the Buddhism and other the wild and religion diversities is other source of the cultural richness. It can also lead to the religious and tensions and associations, associational conflict, caste system. The caste system through the officialis and abolished the continues to have other deep impact on the Indian society. Discrimination based on the caste still the persistence, particularly in rural areas, affecting access to the education, in employment and social opportunities. Regional disparities. There are the significant economic and developmental disparities between the different state and the religion. For the instance, state like the Maharashtra and Karnataka have the higher level of the industrialization and economic development compared to states and like Bihar and Odisha, which face higher levels of the poverty and the underdevelopment. And gender inequalities and gender disparities and persist in various forms and including and including unequal access to the education and the health care's lower workforce and participations and wrote for the women and issues that related to the violence and harassment against the women, tribal communities and political fragmentation. Political parties on often have to the navigate and complex alliance across the state and resigns to the forms a stable government and aid the nation levels. Balancing the interest of different state and communities can the sometimes and lead to the political challenges. Environment and ecological variations in India diverse the geographical and climate conditions and represented unique challenges and for the environmentals and management and the conversations. For the instant, resign like the Himalayas and face the different ecological concern compared to the coastal areas and the healthcare disparities. Healthcare disparities, access to the qualities and the healthcare varieties significant across the different state and the rural urban areas. State in the northeastern region of the Indias and for the instant and face the challenges in healthcare infrastructure and access to the medical services, education disparities and there are the disparities in educational opportunities and the resources across the state. And while the some states have well developed and the education system other struggles and with the issues like the shortage of the schools and teachers and opportunity to be the leveraged with the regional diversity culture tourism. Each regions in India and has its the owns the unique cultural heritage including historical site festival and the traditionals and promoting culture tourism. Tourism can attract visitors from around the world and the boost economics and for the intense the cultural richness of the Rajasthan and with its the places and festivals is other major tourism attractions and tourism and circuits religion and tourism etc. Economically specializations different region and have the specific strength and that can be the harnessed and for the economically growth. Economically growths and for instant states States like the Karnataka, Telangana have emerged as the technology and hubs, while the Punjab, Haryana are known and they are the agricultural productivity, service and localizations. India linguistics. India linguistic diversity presented and the opportunity of for language services and translation and the localizations companies. Companies can tap into this market and to offer the services that the caters and to various linguistics groups. Skill diversifications. For example, different regions and have the unique skills. Have unique skills and set and the expertise for instance and craft and craftsmanship of the artisan in the states and like the Uttar Pradesh and the West Bengal can be the leveraged and for the handicraft and industries and which has the both domestic and the international markets. Natural resources and agriculture. India diverse and geographical allow for other wide ranges of the agriculture practices and the availability of the various natural resources. For example, states like the Gujarat and the Maharashtra are known and for their the industrials and manufacturing sectors, while states like Kerala and Himachal Pradesh have the strong potentials and for the tourism and agriculture, education and knowledge hubs. Some regions and have established themselves as the educational hub and for the instant. And cities like the Bengaluru, Pune and the Hyderabad are known and for their concentrations of educational institutions and research center. Healthcare specializations and certain states and the cities have developed specialization healthcare services and facilities. For examples, and cities like the Chennai and the Delhi and have established themselves as medicals tourism destinations, attracting the patient and from around the world and the renewables energy potential. India diverse and climates and the geography and provided opportunities for different forms of the renewables energy production. State like the Rajasthan and Gujarat and with their the abundant and sunlight and have the significant potential for solar energy project. Culinary and tourism. India is diverse and the cuisines and is other major attraction for food and the enthusiast and is the reasons and offers it is the oven unique flavors and the dishes, creating opportunities for the culinary tourism and the food related business and handicraft and the artisanal and industries and different religion have the district and craft and the artisanal traditions. And for example, the intricate and embroidery of knowledge and the poetry of the khurjas and the sink sell sari for Banarasi and are wells and known and can be the marketed and both the domestically and the internationally. Conclusion by the recognition and capitalizations on the strength of each region in India can unblock its the full economically and the culturals and potentials encouraging inter-regionals and collaborations and for fostering a sense of the unity and within the diversities within the diversities can the further inferences of benefits. Dutta. Inferences of benefits of India reach the regionally and the tapestry. Role of the woman and the woman organization, population and association issues, poverty and development issues. Economically, growth don't always directly address issue of the poverty and the food insecurities, and there can be the disparities and in the distributions of the benefits examined to 50% difficulties level moderate and reference. The Hindus why the questions, and whilst the India is set to the becomes the third largest economic in the world in 2028, and 80 crores Indians will still be receiving free and the food grains to stave off the hungers and key demands of the questions, to write about the reason for lingering hungers in the country, and despite various measures and suggested reforms to the restified it directively words examine. When asked to the examine, we must investigate the topics and contact word in details in inspect it, investigated it, and established the key fact and issues related to the topic in questions, and while doing so we should explain and why thus the fact and issues are important and their the implications. Structure of the answer. Introduction. Begin by the giving the statistics about the widespread natures of the hunger and food insecurity in the country. Body. First, explain the various schemes and measures aimed towards an elimination hungers in India. National Food Security Mission, Poshan Abhiyan, and the Antyodaya Anna Yojana, etc. Next, write about the causes for the limitations in the above efforts. Disruptions in food systems and dried up income sources and job losses and the consequent financial hardships, etc. Bring out its the impact. Next, suggest reforms that are the needed to the overcomes the above. Conclusion. Why the writing a way forwards. Introduction. Food security is one of the crucial factor of the development and poverty alleviation around the globe. The right to the food is the principle of the international human rights law and food security as the defined by the United Nations Community on the World Food Security (CFS) is the conditions in which all the peoples eat all times and have the physical, social, and economically access to the sufficient, safe, and the nutrients and food that the meats and their the dietaries need, and the food preferences and for and the active and the healthy life. And our current understandings of food security includes the four dimensions of access, availability, and utilizations and stability. India ranked 111th out of the 125 countries in the Global Hunger Index 2023, with the country reporting the highest child wasting rate at the 18.7%, and the Global Hunger Index (GHI) is other tool for the comprehensively and measuring and the track hunger at global, regional, and national level. Body barrier interventions to tackle the hungers in the country, and Pradhan Mantri Matru Bandhana Yojana (PMMBY) and 6,000 is the transferred and directly to the bank account of the pregnant woman for availing better facilities for their the delivery. Poshan Abhiyan aimed to the reduce and startings under the nutrition and the enemies and the low birth and weight and babies through the synergies and the convergence among different programs and better monitoring and the improved and community mobilizations. National Food Security Act and NFSA 2013 aims to the ensures food and the nutrition security for the most vulnerable, and through it is the associated schemes and programs making access to the food other legal rights. Midday meal and MDM schemes and aims to the improve nutritional and levels among school children, which also has other direct and the positives impact on enrollment and retentions and attendance in the schools. And integrated child development services ICDS, with its the network of 1.4 billion millions Anganwadi Center and the reaching almost 100 millions and beneficiaries, and who includes pregnant and new nursing mothers and the children up to the 6 years. Public distribution system and PDS, and that the reaches over the 800 millions people under the National Food Security Act. Additionally, Niti Aayog and has worked on other national nutrition strategy NNS and isolated and the 100 most backward district and for the earnings the priorities and those for the interventions. The issues continue to be the persistence and sure in the nations and food security, economically distress, the significant rise in the food and the insecurities, and as the shown was thus the data is the clear manifestations of the overall economically distress, and during this period marked by other depending agrarians and crisis failing the investment across sectors and shrinkings in employment opportunity, the latest PLFS data have shown that the empowerment rates in the recent years have been higher than in the last 4 decades. It is widely believed and that the demonetizations and the introductions of the goods and services tax were two prime causes of economic distress during this period. NFSA NAFSA issues. NAFSA does not guarantee the universal right to food and targeted restrict the right to the food to the only 75% of the rural and 50% of the urban population in India. Act would not apply in the times of the war and flood and droughts and fire, the cyclone or earthquake, and this is the highly problematic clause. And giving that and food is becomes it most necessary, and during thus the circumstances and the act focus primarily on the distributions of rice and wheat and fails to address the utilizations and dimensions of food security, giving that other major reason for the micronutrient and deficiency in India is become of other Keral's based diet. The NSFA does not address the issue of the nutrition and the nutritional and deficiency adequately. Under the National Food Security Act, the identification of the beneficiaries is to be the complete by the state governments as per the findings of the Con- Comptroller and Auditors Generals in 2016. A the massive 49% of the beneficiaries and were it to be the identified by the state government on quantity quality issues and the inadequacies and the distributions of food through the public and the distribution mechanism and food the adulterations and in the distributed food beneficiaries have the complained and of the receiving poor qualities food grain issues with the procurement open-ended and the procurement all incoming grains and accepted the even if the buffer stock is filled, creating other storage in the open market. The recent implementations of the nation's food security act and would only increase the quantums of procurement and resulting in higher price for grain. The gap between requirement and exciting the storage capacities. The open market operations and OMO and are the much less compared to what is needed to the liquidate the excessive and stock and issue with the storage. Inadequate storage and capability with FCI and food grains routings or damaging on the cap and or the covers and plinth and storage. The money logged in thus the excessive and stocks beyond the buffer norms is more than address the 1 lakh crore. Issue with allocations of the food grains and inequities and identification of beneficiaries and illicit fair price shops and the shops owners and have the created a large number of the beggars carts and or the ghost carts for the non-existence purpose to sell food grains in the open market. Issue with the transportations and leakages in food grains and distributions to be the reduced as the most leakages in the PDS takes place in the initial stages. Climate changes, higher temperature and the unreliable rainfalls makes farming difficult. Climate changes and not only impact crop but also the livestock and forestry fisheries and the aquaculturals and can the cause grave and social and economically consequences and in the forms of the reduced income and eroded and livelihood and trade the disruptions and the adverse health impact, lack of access to the remote areas and for the tribal communities and habitations in remote and difficult terrains and practices of the sustainable farming and led to the significant economically backwardness, increase in rural and to the urban migrations and large proportion of the information workforce and resulting in the unplaced. दो तो डालना तो सभी डालेंगे क्या? हाँ, तो इतनी शर्म नहीं आ रही कि अच्छे अच्छे डाल के बैठ रहे सो रही। हाँ, सोवे सोवायन से increase in rural to the urban migration, large proportions of the informals and workforces resulting in the unplanned और मोह कोई बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है फालतू planned growth of the slum and which lack in the basic and health and the hygiene facilities, insufficient housing and the increased food and insecurity, overpopulations, poverty, lack of the education and the gender inequality, corruptions and divertings the grain to the open market to get the better margins and selling poor quality grain aid the rations and shops the irregulars and opening of the shops and aid to the issues of the food insecurity measures and needed government private sectors and NGOs should the carefully coordinates and their the response to overlapping and food and the health crisis and work with the community and organizations to make sure the interventions are the culturally acceptance and reach the most vulnerable and preserves local ecosystem. Food should be the prices not only why it's the weight or the volumes and but also why it's the nutrient densities and it is the freedoms from contaminations and its the contributions and to ecosystem services and social justice. Government should expand and access to the maternal and the child health care and as well as the education on the healthy diet and child and feeding practices, supporting smallholders and farmers and becoming the sustainable and diversified producers and the government and the NGOs and must seek to the improve those the farmers and access to the agriculture inputs and extension services, coupling local and the indigenous and agricultural knowledge and with new the technology and exciting human rights and based the multilateral mechanism and the international standards such as the community on the world food security and must be the strengthened to support the inclusive policy and making and the sustainable food system. Conclusion, prioritizing and the early childhood nutrition is key to the ensuring the India development rests on the strong and the steady shoulders. India availability to the hardness and long-term demographic dividend and rest on its the prioritizing and nutrition in its the health and agendas and reformings and the institutional frameworks and through which the interventions are the derived. Proactive measures and the policies reform are the needed to the address and the challenges posed by the India aging and populations examine to 50 but difficulties level and the moderate reference leave mint. Why the question, the articles and discussion, the demographically shift in India and the emphasizing the need for the proactive approach in the addressing the challenges posed by in the aging populations and key demands of the question to write about the impact of the ages population in the security and way to the overcomes them and directive words examine. And when asked to the examine, we must the investigate the topic contact word in detail and inspect, and it is the investigation it and the established the key fact and issues related to the topic in question. And while doing so, and we should explain why the fact and issues are important and their the implication. Structure of the answer: introduction, define agisons, sums and its the association feature body in the first parts, and write about the various issues and with the elderly and populations. And elders generation is often seen as the showers and change resistant and expensive and the ultimately even useless. And mention about the elderly and beings the neglected in many the aspects, including in their the own families and in public policies in the next part. And write about the steps and policies and there are the needed in this the regard. Conclusion with a way forward. Introduction. Currently, India population is among the youngest in and the aging world, and however, a major proportions of India population will be the aged by the 2015, and this calls for the more forward and looking policies incorporating population dynamics, education and skills, healthcare, gender sensitivity, and most the importantly and geriatric care. The United Nations Populations and Fund India has released a 2023 India Agings report, which project is a significant increase in the elderly population in India body. Major fundings of the report and fundings descriptions. Elderly population growth: the populations of the people aged 80 plus and years is the projected to the grow by the around and to 79% between the 2022 and 2015. By the 2046, it is the likely that the elderly populations surpassed and the populations and of the children and aged 0 to 15 years in the country. And elderly population shares: by the 2015, the elderly population in India is expected to make up over 20% of the total population. The presented share of the elderly is about 10% in 2021. Poverty among the elderly: more than 40% of the elderly in India are in the poorest wealth quantiles and with over 18% and having no incomes. Gender difference in the life expectancy: and women on the averages have a longer life expectancy and compared to the men, and with the variations and across states. Sex ratio among the elderly: and the sex ratio among the elderly is increasing, the indicating longer survivals of the women comparison to men. And the genders: poverty in old ages: poverty is gendered and in the old ages, and with older women and more the likely to be the widows living the alone and the dependent on the family support. Challenges in the demographic and transitions, and significant interstate variation in the elderly population reflects different stages of the demographics transitions and policy recommendations. The report and suggest the policies to the address the feminizations and the ruralizations of the elderly population, increase the awareness of the schemes and for the older persons, and promotes in the Shitu agings. Issue associated with the elderly population in India: feminizations. Feminization of the aging and the sex ratio of the elderly has the increased from the 938 and women to the 1000 men in 1971 to the 1033 in the 2011, and is the projected to increase to the 1060 by the 2026. The report and also noted that the between the 2000 and 2015, the population of the 80 plus pupils and would have the grown 7,700%, and with other dominated of the widows and highly prependent and very old women. and so the special needed of the such old women and would need the significant focus of the policy and program. Financial issues and the retirement and the differences of the elderly on their the child for the basic necessaries and should an increase in out of the pocket and expenses on the treatment and migration of the youth working age persons and from the rural areas have the negatives and impact on the elderly living alone and with only the spouse and usually the poverty and distress health the multiples and the disabilities among the elders in old ages and health issues and like the blindness and locomotion the motion disabilities and the deafness and are most relevant mental illness arising from the sensitivity and the neurosis as absence of geriatrics care facilities at the hospital in rural areas. Social issues. Indian society is the undergoing rapid transformation under the impact of the industrialization, urbanization, techniques and the technological challenges, education and the globalizations. Consequently, the traditional value and the institution are in the process of the erosions and the adaptations, resulting in the weakening of intergenerational ties, and that where the hallmark of the traditional families feeling of the powerlessness and loneliness uselessness and isolation is elderly generational gaps roadmap for the elderly care with the passage of times, increasing the monthly pensions of elderly to minimum of the raise 2000 per month under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana housing for the aged and particularly the aged poor must be the poverty prosperities assisted and living the facilities for the indigent and the elderly particularly and those with age related issues like the dementias and needs the policy focus and more tax benefits or at the least and removing the tax on the deposits interested for the seniors and enhancing the jerry geriatric care, health infrastructure, and especially in the rural areas, allocations of the special budget for the elderly and population at the both levels, and providing the entertainment facilities like the libraries and the clubs and at the panchayat level. Appreciation for the contribution of the elderly at village level. Conclusion. Social security is the concurrent is the responsibilities of the central and the state government as the mandates under the Indian constitutions, i.e. and well-beings of the senior citizens and Article 41 in the particulars and the 46 in the generals of the Indian Constitution. In this regard, and national policy on the senior citizen 2011 was framed and for the welfare and care for the older persons, and we must focus on the protections of already exciting social supporting system and traditional social institutions such as the families and the kinships and neighborhood and bondings communities and bondings and the communities and participations must be the revived and the kins should show the sensitivities and towards the elderly citizens. Urbanization, their problems and their the remedies and repeat urbanization sometimes and paces the development of the proper wastage management infrastructure leading to the unsanitary landfills and examine to 50 words. Difficulty level moderate reference and Indian Express. Why this the question and editorials and discussion the issues of other growings and vast hills in the Bhubaneswar highlighting the environmental and the health concern association with the improper and best management key demand of the questions to write issues and with the respected increased dumping of the wastes in the landfill and the remedies for the better waste management directive words examine when asked to the examine and we must the investigates and the topic content what's in detail and the inspect. It investigate and the established the key facts and the issues related to the topic in questions. While doing so, we should explain why the fact and issues are important and their the implications. Structure of the answer introductions. Give other statistics and about the increasing municipals and solid waste and with the increasing rate of the urbanizations. Body. First tried the problems and associated and with the rapid urbanization and vast management in India and at the landfills and leading or leachings of chemicals and spread of the diseases and release of the poisoners and the toxin gases and fire the serious health and the environmental hazard of to the pupils etc. Next suggestions and to deal with the solid waste and so that it may prove other resources instead of the best conclusion. Conclude by writing a way forward introductions. India alone generates and more than the 1000 metric tons of the solid waste every day, and which is the higher than many countries total Delhi and waste generations taken together. Large metropolis and such as the Mumbai and the Delhi generate and around the 9000 metric tons and 8300 metric tons of the waste per day respectively. India suffers from the insufficient and in sufficient waste infrastructure and also from the increasing rates of solid waste generations per capita basis the infrastructure and technologies. We must also and concede and that we have not the address the issues from other systematic and perspectives. A growing West Hills in the Bhubaneswar, highlighting the environmental and health concern associated with improper waste management body. Current situations of the MSW in India. ULBs are the responsible for the segregates and waste the collections and transportings and waste in the covered and vehicles and processings and the recycled and separated in the dominated hazard and waste and the disposing inert and the material in the sanitary and landfills. Various studies relieve that about the 90% of the MSW is the disposals of the unscientifically in the open depth and landfill, creation problems to the public health and the environment. And over the 377 million urban pupils and live in the 7935 towns and cities and generates 62 billion tons of the municipal solid waste per annum. Only 43 billion tons and empty of the waste is other collected. 11.9 empty is the treated and 31 empty is the dumped in the landfill sites. Landfill side and most the sites and has the conflicted themselves to collect and the transportations of the solid waste processing and the safe disposal. Safe disposal are being and attempted only in the few cases. The CPCB and report also the revealed and that the only 68% of the MSW generated in the country is collected of the which and 28% is the treated by the municipal authorities and thus the merely and 19% of the total waste generation is currently treated. Disappearance of the urban water bodies and the wetlands in urban areas and can be attributed to the illegal dumping of the construction and the demolitions wastage. And some of the major issues concerning the solid waste management are absence of the segregations of the waste aid the sources, lack of the funds for the waste management aid the ULBS, unwillingness of the ULBS to the introduction dues and proper collection and segregations and transportations and the treatment and disposal systems, lack of the technical expertise and the appropriates and the institutional arrangement and lack of the infrastructure and the technologies, lack of the involvement and from the private sectors and non-governmental organization, indifferent of the citizens toward the best management due to the lack of awareness and lack of the community participations towards the best management and hygiene conditions, lack of the sewage management plan. About the 70% of the plastic packaging productions and turns into the plastic wastage and within a short period and are unorganized and vendors and market existence of the slum areas and the corruption are others the issues and plaguing an MSWM and remedies to the tackles MSW and state government should provide the financial support to the ULBS to the improve their waste management system under the various schemes and programs initiative like the smart cities missions and Amrut and should provide and the significant funding to the improve and cities civics civic services infrastructure and the key to the efficiency and waste management is to the ensure the proper segregations of waste at the shores and to ensure that the waste goes and through the different streams of recycling and the resources recovery as started in the solid waste management rules 2016. Waste to the energy is the key component of SWM. Installations of waste to the compost and the biomethanation plants and would reduce the load of the landfill sites, and there is the need to the encourage and research and the development so as to the reinvent and best management system in India. The focus should be on the recycling and the recovering from waste and not the landfill. Further, it is the important to the encourage recycling of e-waste and so that the problems of the e-waste public private and partnerships model for the waste management should be the encouraged. Construction and the demolitions and waste should be the stored and separately and disposed of as per the construction and the demolitions waste management rules 2016 responsibilities of the generators and have been the introduced into the segregates and waste into three streams in wet and the biodegradables and dry plastics, paper, metals and wood, etc. and the domestic hazardous and waste and diapers, napkins and empty the container of clean agents and mosquitoes repellent, etc. and handovers segregate waste to the authorized and reg pickers or the waste collection collectors and or the local body sensitizations of the citizens as well as the government and authorized and community participating involvement of NGOs. Littering should be the prohibited and international based and the practices should be the emulated and South Korea is one of the few countries and to the separated and the recycle food waste. It is also used in landfill recovery and the projected such as the non Jido recovery project and which have the successfully and transformed hazardous and waste side into the sustainable ecological attractions. Conclusion: Municipal and solid waste management (MSWM) is one of the major environmental problems of Indian cities. The need of the hours is the scientific, sustainable, and environment friendly management of waste. Planning, investment, and the community engagement and are the key to ensuring that the cities are not only rapidly and urbanization but also the developing in other sustainable and inclusive manners and elaborate. 250 words difficulties level moderates. Refresh the Hindu and side on the India. By the question articles emphasis and the need for the improving the qualities of life in urban India. It is highlights the the challenges of the rapid urbanization such as the inadequate and infrastructure, housing shortage and environmental degradations. key demand of the question and to understand the main issues and in the urban areas as well as the mentions the necessary step and through the planning and the administrations to boost the qualities of the life in urban areas and directive words elaborate and give other details and account as to the how and why it's the occurs and or what is the contact and you must be the defining and key terms and whatever's appropriated and the substantials and with the relevant and associated fact. Introductions begin by the giving on the account on how rapidly Indian urban spaces are the growing both in the terms of the population's density as well as the growing urban space body. First mention the various issues plugging urban areas and such as the need for the affordables and housing issues of the urban slums and best management poor and the drainage etc. Next the mention about the important factors on which policy and deliberation needed to take places and such as the balances of the urban population density with economic of the skills and infrastructurals and the facilitated among others. Next, discuss the importance of the mobilizing and funds and others than the public funds and also some of the essential and component of urban plannings to include the sustainability improved and the mobility etc. and for other well and functioning urban space conclusion by the summing the key component for other functions for the functional and the effective urban cities. Introduction. Urbanization is one of the most common characterizing of the Introduction. Urbanization is one of the most common characteristic of the economic development as the economic growth and gradually the process of the urbanization depend on the shift of the surplus and population of from the rural urbans and the areas and among with the growth of the some industrial urban centers in India and the urban population accounts to the 461 billion people in these numbers is growing by the 2.3% and each year's body issues plugging the urban areas and the dwellings and the crisis and there is the continued scarcity of the housing as the numbers of the people living in the metropolitan areas grow in India. More than half of the urban and the household and the occupancy are the single room and with and the averages occupancy and per rooms of the 4.4 persons. Overcrowding urban and suggestions is other content and it is in the elements and that is the growing day by day and as more the pupils and immigrant and migrant to the cities and town in the quiet quest of a better living and unemployment lack of the highly unskilled job is most prevalent and in the micropolitan areas especially among the educated individuals and Islam industrialization is other fast faced but and there is other shortage of the developed and land for the housings. There are about 13.7 billion and Islam household in the country sheltering a populations and of the 65.49 million pupils across the country. How much is the 65% of Indian citizens have the adjoining the slums and where the pupils and live in small houses adjacent to each other. Sewage infrastructure in most and the metropolitans and areas insufficient sewage infrastructure is over concerning the rapid population's growth, health crisis and communication cables. and illness and like the typhoid and dysentery, plague and the diarrheas and eventually can spread rapidly. The COVID-19 pandemic is the live example of how the populated cities and the medical facilities collapse under the weight of the pandemic. Pollution, the need for the transportations and increases with the increase in populations, resulting in traffic congestion and pollutions and urban heats at Iceland and UHI thus are the significantly and warmer and urban areas than there the surrounding rural areas due to human activities and urban heats and Iceland is other major problem associated with the rapid urbanizations. Cities infrastructure across India is in disrepairs and 2017 and give us other series of unfortunate example in Mumbai. Multiple building collapse and important factors on which policies and deliberation needs to take place. Government under development strategy there's to the urban related militaries. At the national GUI at level, the Ministry of the Urban Development MOUD and Ministry of the Housing and the Urban Poverty Alleviation MOHUPA. The Government of India overreaching and urban development objective is to the create and the economically and the productive efficiency inclusive and responsive and ULBS by focusing on the strategics and outcomes. Universal access to other minimum level of services, establishment of city and wide framework for planning and the governance, modern and transparent budgeting and accounting and the financial sustainability and for the ULBS and the services delivery institutions and utilizations of e-governance and transparency and accountability in urban services and delivery and management slum-free cities. Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewals Mission and launched in the 2005 which was the replaced by the Atal Mission for the Rejuvenation and Urban Transportation in 2015. The focus of both and thus the mission has been on urban reforms and the massive investment in infrastructure, especially in the mega sites. Smart City and another very important program for the urban development, especially of the mega sites and by the government of India and the accompanied by the hug investment in thus the cities in the is the smart cities mission and which aims at making the cities smart through promoting the mixed in land use, housing and inclusiveness, creating walkables and localities, preserving and the developing open space and the promoting the varieties of transportation options, applying smart solution to the infrastructure and services in area-based development. Urbanization must lead to the economical development. It is established that the currently 2020 and the share of India urban population is about the 35% of its the total population and but the share of total GDP originating from the urban areas is about the 75% and the shares of the urban areas in India and the total GDP was 45% in 1990 and rose to the 63% in 2014. It is the argued and that the racing's urbanization and build the in ignite and urban consumptions and services and infrastructure and that the urban focus can put India economic on the higher growth and path rocks, fueling urban consumptions and specialty of the premium end of the consumers and goods and automobiles, powering urban services like the consumers and banking, healthcare and telecoms, data services, internet during the infrastructure sectors, including civil urban infrastructure services and the real estates. Human capital and the innovations and cities are the center of the knowledge, innovation and specialization of the production and services. Cities and facilitate creative thinking and the innovations. Economically agglomerations and the agglomeration economies are the positive benefits of the economics and activities that firm often from beings and located and in the close proximity and with those engaged in the similar and business or interested and agglomerating. It refers to the reduction of the business and cost as the more efficiency and the productivity occurs and become of the positives and technologicals and the pecuniary and externalities and arising from the interactions of economically agents are located in the close spatial and approximately and due to economic of scale and knowledge spillover. Conclusion: the point of other cities is to facilitate interactions and between the citizens and the business and the public infrastructures. Those interactions and are what drive economic growth and within the cities and investment and from the companies and the consumption of citizenry. The city investing in interventions that aid its the organic growth and house business activities. Thus, the factors and work best when they are not mutually and exclusively by the investing in the development of sustainable cities. India need to be the break away from the myth of the compartmentalized city. Social empowerment, communication, realistics, and secularism. The issue of the farmers and suicide is other complex. And the multifaceted and problems and that the stems from other combination of social, economics, and the environmental factor and examine difficulties level moderate difference reference Indian experience sign on India. Why the questions articles discuss the increasing numbers of the farmers and suicide and emphasizes the need to the protect and farmers from the uncertainty of natures uncertainty of the natures and key demand of questions and to write about the cases of the farmer and suicide and the measures needed to the prevent them. Directive key demand of the question to write about the cases of the farmer and suicides and the measures and needed to the prevent them and directive birds and examine when the asked to the examine and we must the investigated and the topic contact word in the detail and inspected and it is the investigates and it is and the established the key factor and issues related to the topic in the questions. While doing so we should explain why thus the fact and the issues are the important and there the implications and structure of the answers Introduction begin by the giving statistics and regarding and the farmer suicides in India and body. First, the right about the cases of farms and suicides and low per capita and land and the indebtedness and high loans rated and high cost of the productions and the labors and inability and to the pull up and the resources need for the hearings labor due to the shortage of times and low agricultural productions and process and low MSPs, decreasing water tables and increasing cost of the pumpings and water out and economic exploitations why the dealers and selling the agriculture next and right about the steps and that are the needed to the prevent farmer suicides and conclusion with other way forward. Introduction. According to the National Crime Report and Bureau and data, a total of the 10,881 persons and from the farming and sectors did by the suicide in 2021. This includes the farmers and farms, laborers, several and suicide economic factors have enabled and the environment and vulnerables to distress in the agricultural belt of the nations and unable to cope with the mounting depth and the inability and to take care of theirs the families and many that choose to end their lives body factor behind increasing the cases of the farmer suicides and the plummeting incomes and mounting debt and high interest rate, particularly of the non-institutional sources and have the mismatches between the farms and inputs and outputs and prices and failures failures and the unfavorables and terms and of the trade between the prices and the received by the farmers have the contributed and fairly to the decline farms and income the cost of the cultivations MSP of the wheat and the paddy increase at the rate of the 2% annum and while the cost of the cultivations and increase at the rate of the 7.9% during the last one and the a half decades with a growth rate of the around and the 1.6% during the 2012 and 17 and the stress on the natural resources and the palm sector is trapped in other very vicious circle of the crisis expandedly and small farmers are the most sufferers due to the declining water tables and the cost of the irrigation structures has the increase as the farmers have to replace the country vehicles and pumps by the costly submersibles pump. According to the Niti Aayog in 2022 and 23 of the 21 crores hectares of the shown areas and across India, 11.5 crores and hectares and had the access to the irrigations, 54.76 against the 47.80% in the 2013 and 14. The farmer are being the exposed and by the traditional by the traditionals and According to the Niti Aayog in 2022-23, of the 21 crores and hectares of the sown areas and across India, and 11.5 crore the hectares, and access to the irrigation and 54.76 against the 47.80, and in the 2013 and 14 the farmers are being applauded and by the traders and the dealers and providing them the superior seed and the agrochemicals. Agriculture in Punjab and suffer from the monocrops culture of the mainly wheat and the paddy, and with his the cropping pattern farming itself is becoming in the end viable occupations, and due to rising fixed and by levels input the cost and how the remuneration leading to the failing the profits and margins. Cost of inputs variables and cost is an increase the due to the rising and prices of inputs like the fertilizer, pesticides and BD side diesels and etc. Fixed cost like the installations and dependings of the submersibles pumps and due to the depending and water tables, and for increase the financial woes of farmer. For a small and the marginal farmer, it is the economically and unviable to make such an investment, especially by the borrowing from informal sources and at the high rate of the interest investment, and especially by the borrowings and from the informal sources at high rate of the internal data and the anomaly. Exciting studies have the analysis and the intensive city of the farmer suicides and in the isolations and without the comparing and the farmer suicides and with those by the others and the professionals and the policies measures are needed to the prevent farmer society and the society. The schemes for the depth and sweepings of the borrowers and should be made of more effectiveness for the converting the non and institutionals and the depth into the institutionals and depth. The AMSCN should be set up and set up at every village to provide the customs hearings and services to small farmers on a priority and to the basis. Quality farms inputs like the speed and fertilizers and the pesticide must be the supply and to the farmers at the subsidy seed and prices. Rationalization of subsidies and especially in favors of small farmer and may control the appreciating farms cost and making small farming variation. For alternatives and employment and the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantees schemes should be affected the implemented and by the ensuring the stipulated annual unemployment of 100 days and rather than the exciting 30 days to each the families in the state identified and the developing cross niches, and that will the encourages and allied and activities and appropriated the agroclimatics zone of the state and the developing corporations primarily processing and the marketing units of for crop and the activities in those zones are help the improve the economic well. Using information and the technologies and the electronic medias like the DD in Kisan channels to spread the awareness about the government scheme and the monsoon predictions. Skill development of the farmer and so that they can develop alternating the sources of the income government. Government should end the initiative alternatives and the unemployment generation programs and land poolings, where lands of the small farmers and can be the pooled and into the larger species and the benefits and can be the maximized. Effective and the implementation of various government schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana and the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and the soil health card schemes. The refusals of the Supreme Court of India to grant legal recognition to marriages and between the persons of the same sex is viewed by the many as a significant legal the setback for the queer community in the country and commitment to 50 words. Difficulty level at the moderates. Reference the Hindu and sign by the questions and in other long and the waited judgment the Supreme Court and held that some sex couples and do not have the right to marry under the Special Marriage Act. Key demand of the questions and to write about the legalizing same-sex marriages in the country and the impact of the recent SC judgment. Directive words and commitment. Comments here we the must express our the knowledge and the understanding of the issue and here too we must express our knowledge and understandings of the issues and begin by the giving context with the respect to the same sex marriages in the first part and provide about the need to legalize same sex and the marriages in the country and post of the above.